while they're thinking about the which place you will be getting at the end, you will be getting some scholarships regardless, because you're in the top 3. With that, why don't you start with a very quick summary of what are the most, very quick minute, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, what are the most important lessons learned from what happened in 2012 and 2014, and what would be your most important recommendations to this company?
Sure, absolutely. I'll start off for my team. Hello, my name is Kevin Sukiel, one of the 4 founders of Cymple Security. So our team, when we were discussing recommendations for the go-ahead, we kept 3 things in mind: people, processes, and technologies. And we wanted to make sure that our recommendations covered 3 of those bases. So for technologies, one thing that we thought that they could do better going in the future was getting away just from strictly AWS and expanding their cloud providers to Azure and or Google Cloud. By using more than one, you're strengthening your availability, right? When we look at the CIA triad, that if there were one provider to go down, at least there's another one there to help either pick up the slack, or at least half the infrastructure is going to stay up. Having 2 cloud environments is, while it is a difficult thing to implement, having the right team and just the people, employees wanting to do it correctly go a long way. I know there is an article from General Electric on a Cloud Guru about implementing Azure and AWS together, and how nobody knew anything. Nobody even knew about, nobody was an expert in either one, but just having the employees want to build a better infrastructure is all they really need to take a step in the right direction. Privilege access management is also a big thing we wanted to discuss, because when these email accounts were compromised, or if any employee is compromised within the system, we want to make sure that the administrators who have access to certain consoles are the ones who are accessing those consoles and nobody else. Furthermore, we wanted to talk about vulnerability assessments using tools like Nessus or Qualys, somewhere to identify where certain vulnerabilities exist in the system. And last but not least, having a strong WAF, having a strong web application firewall that are going to protect your system. Whether somebody is trying to access your domain by just strictly an IP address, or through other means, having a strong firewall at that forefront is going to help attacks, DDoS attacks, like the one we saw in PopVote. I'm going to pass it over to Jacob, who will talk about some other recommendations.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. Pleasure to meet you all. My name is Jacob Leichter. Kind of building on those recommendations, one thing we discussed was that synthesis of people, processes, and technologies. Kevin already mentioned penetration testing, but running tabletop exercises, security awareness trainings, and building out an incident response plan and disaster recovery procedures would have really saved PopVote when the DDoS attack started to hit, and given them a clear sense of direction on how to proceed, as opposed to shutting down everything for a day or 2 and kind of scrambling, trying to reschedule things. And it would have given their employees a better sense of how to respond and where to go from there. And one thing we also discussed was multi-factor authentication. Secure the accounts. If your account is compromised and you have multi-factor authentication and you're getting login credentials when you're not even in the office, that is a good sign that there's something going on there. And it keeps things secure, and gives a little more time to build out that response and investigate what's going on. I'll pass it off to my colleague Orly to continue with the recommendations.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. And as part of other recommendations that we were thinking about, first of all, network segmentation is extremely important. If one of the systems if one of the networks gets hacked, we want to make sure that they don't have access to other sensitive data. So what we want to focus is on segmenting it and making sure that this doesn't happen. IDS, IPS systems was really important. They were not implemented back at the time. Let's say that the software design of the system itself needed to be built up from scratch. It was really bad implemented. So we would also recommend to redesign all the website. Utilizing as part of the PPT as part of their procedures, cyber defense matrix is extremely important to making sure that they're meeting all the demands. Defense in depth, why? Because if one of the plans of the security plans, which always happens that, some of the controls are not able to block certain type of attacks, then we want to make sure to have a backup plan and have another control that will hopefully block it. Now, we want to reduce single points of failure. Why? Because we don't want to rely just on one point that if it fails down, then our entire network and systems are just gonna not be, we're not just gonna be able to meet with the CIA triad, and the system is not gonna be available in this type of attack. What we really wanted to focus on more than anything, more than confidentiality, was availability. It was really important back at the time because for the voting, it just needed to be there at the moment. So yeah, I just want to I just really want to emphasize that when we're building a system and when we're securing our system, we really want to focus on planning always for the worst, and hopefully, just think that we're going to have the best outcomes. Now I'm going to pass to Margarita, who's going to wrap up this part.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margarita, and I'm going to wrap up a little bit by talking about the balance. So as a team, we decided that it was extremely important that we found that balance between security and usability. So what we would have recommended is kind of to build a completely different application structure from the start. So there should have been better authentication. So we could have done that with Auth0 or ping identity. And we should have also had a better trust between the digital product and the user. And this could have been done with loop 11 or loop back. And then another important thing is that we felt that there were a lot of unnecessary security measures that kind of destroyed this balance that exists between security and usability. So by removing some of these overcomplicated security controls, there could have been a much better usability. And then the last thing that we talked a lot about was testing and feedback. So we wanted to understand what the true needs of the customer were and what the goals of the application were. So we agree that once we found this balance between these two things, the program would have been a lot better. So just going back over everything, we felt it was really important that there was a lot of testing, that we were able to integrate more than one cloud provider. We talked about privileged access management. We wanted to conduct vulnerability assessments, and we wanted to install a web application firewall. And as a whole, as Orly said before, if we prepared for the worst, then we would have been prepared for anything.
Excellent summary. Thank you. So, Alex, would you like to start?
Yeah, great summary. Thank you very much, and congratulations to be here in the final round. I mean, happy Sunday. I have a few questions. My name is Alex. I'm Alex Bazay. I'm a Chief Information Security Officer for Align Communications, an MSP provider here in New York City. I have a few questions. So we're dealing with the few incidents or few episodes on 2012 and 2014. And obviously, company did some post-breach analysis or post-incident analysis on both of them. One of the important components of the post-incident analysis, it's a lessons learned. Do you think in 2012, did they learn their lessons properly, or if they missed anything, what was missed that led to 2014 episode?
Team, if I may just jump in there first. So thank you, Alex, for the question. So when we looked at the timeline of events and we saw what happened in 2012, and then we saw what happened again in 2014, looking back retrospectively now, we can see that no, they didn't learn their lesson. And I think what happened was that event right there in the middle, where they actually ran an event without an incident. So they had this sense of security that everything was okay. But they had this IT advisory team that was full of volunteers. They knew they didn't have a strong IT team then. When this event happened in 2012, they should have been hitting that job market looking to build out their security team and IT team to make sure that they had boots on the ground, boots behind the computers, ready to handle next steps. If parts of the application need to be rebuilt, get that rebuilt now. I think by having this volunteer team, they said, listen, we have people, we're working on it. They had an event without an incident, and then boom, 2014 happens again, and it's an onslaught of DDoS attacks later in June that year. So lessons learned, I don't think that fully got across in 2012. I think maybe half the lesson got learned, but then in 2014, the full lesson was learned after they realized what happened.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, like I completely agree with Kevin, like they were trying to switch to providers once they were attacked, but let's just focus on that this was when the incident was already there. And they should have thought about it before it happened and prepare for it before. Now, the way that they started to bring more IT people, it was not enough. Like they learned from 2012, but they didn't bring enough people for what they actually needed.
Okay, thank you. So obviously they did some analysis of the incident, and your presentations was really great as well. You have lots of recommendations. However, ProVote is non-for-profit organizations. Obviously, they do have some constraints, what tools they can choose, what tools they can implement. And in 2014, when they start reaching to different ISPs or different providers, some solutions was simply not affordable for them. So from all of your recommendations that you had for them, what would you think they should focus first? If you have a limited amount of budgets, if you have a limited amount of resources you can put in place, what would you start? What would be most important things to implement for them?
If I may take this one, I think focusing on the technology would probably be the best place to start, because at least that gives you some sort of a buffer. If you're using defense in depth, if you're reducing those single points of failure, let's say a load balancer fails or one server goes down, at least you'll have some other tools to mitigate some of the effects that come with a serious attack, or using network segmentation to protect some of that sensitive client data. That's all extremely helpful. And then over time, you can start building upon that foundation to teach the employees how to utilize those different tools, or build out an incident response plan that gives that guidance of, hey, here's where we are. If something happens, here's how we can get back to where we are, and build out and improve upon that. So I think the technology is really the best place to lay that groundwork for future investments once resources may become more available.
Also, I would say that the procedures and taking care that the people in the organization are pretty aware of the cyber attacks, like that shouldn't cost a lot. The procedures are out there, so I'm pretty sure that they were just like able to go over, for instance, a cyber defense matrix and educating their employees. Like those are pretty affordable security measures that they could have taken.
Yeah, and building on that incident response plan, they should have like quarterly risk assessments, like we said in our recommendations, so they can every so often see what issues are coming up and coming across, or penetration testing, so that every so often the new members of the team can be updated with what's going on. And also this constant review of what the response plan and the disaster recovery plan is, so that everyone is always up to date on what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Alicia, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Alicia Kate, and I work in CISO office at Google. I have a kind of couple of broad questions. In your presentations, with, by the way, congratulations, really sharp and focused presentation. I really enjoyed it. You highlight that from the public relation perspective, it was a bit of a disaster in the way it was handled. And we've seen, since 2012, of course, many incidents and many examples when companies came out actually looking pretty good, even though they suffered cyber incident, but the way they can handle the PR made a difference. What would you say are the most important elements for the companies to consider in the case of an incident, how to go out to the public to protect their image?
Hi, can I start off here? Okay, so I think our most important focus was that communication is key. So how the company was able to present themselves in the press conference. So the way that they were able to answer questions, and if they were open with the users of their program, then we would have solved a lot of previous issues. Also, we talked a little bit about extended voting modules, and we also talked a little bit about paper ballots. And we think that if we had implemented all these things, then it would have been a more successful public relations attempt.
And if I may piggyback on that, part of that communication, I'm just owning up and saying, hey, we've had an attack. Yes, maybe we didn't do some things right, but we're committed to doing better. We're focusing on improving our infrastructure, making sure this doesn't happen again. And offering at least some sort of guarantee that maybe if client data was stolen, how much was stolen, and having some of that transparency so that customers feel like even if there is an incident, the company has their back and that they are looking out for them, and that they'll be honest at the end of the day with what happened and what the next steps are.
I'm just going to piggyback off what Jacob said. Like, that transparency is huge here. Letting the public know what has happened, what was accessed, what wasn't accessed is a caveat that when these data breaches happen, and they're going to continue to happen going on to the future, that's one thing that consumers and citizens who are involved in a voting process are going to be looking for is, am I safe? Do people know if have personal identifying information about me? These are things that when events like this do happen, the company needs to figure out what exactly was touched, for how long, and let's get some information out there to the public. Because the other side of the thing is if they try and hide it or obfuscate what actually happened, and the truth does come out later on down the line, there may be other type of ramifications for the company, and also you lose that trust with the citizen or the client or the consumer.
Yeah, and just to wrap up with this question, this is not the case, but in many of the attacks, like there's financial harm caused to the customers, and the way that the company usually handles this type of harm is like they respond somehow, like financially they respond. Like I remember back in the days that it happened with Target, one of their attacks, that many of the customers got their bank accounts stolen due to this attack, and they were able to respond at a good amount for the harm that was caused.
Okay,
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Eugene. I want to make sure other judges also have time.
Sure, sounds good. So let's move on
Thank you.
to who is next, Radhika?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Radhika Bajpai. Very nice to meet you all, and really great presentation and great summary today. So congratulations on that front. Just a quick question. So as you know, like resources are usually always limited. So in this case, let's say if you are the CISO team and you have limited resources to implement the recommendations that you have suggested, like what would be the top 2 or 3 recommendations that you would want the team to consider and implement initially, which would give the maximum return on investment?
Team, if I don't mind. So time and time again, we speak about the CIA triad, right, in cybersecurity, and the idea of availability comes up. And it always seems to us here at SimpleBits that organizations in 2014 only care about availability, keeping things up and running, and we forget about the other 2. Personally, I think having privileged access management implemented is a must. And also even having some type of vulnerability assessment, knowing where the vulnerabilities lie so that you can upgrade certain key components of your infrastructure. If you're running a Tomcat instance and there is a 0-day that just dropped and the patch is already done, the patch is already out, these are things that the company could benefit from. Having an inventory of their assets and knowing where vulnerabilities lie is going to help them in the long run. So while availability would be great to have the extra cloud infrastructure and all that stuff, we can't ignore the confidentiality and integrity as well. So I think having some type of vulnerability assessment solution and also privileged access management would be 2 key components. And I'll pass it off to our team if they have any other ideas or recommendations.
Right. I definitely agree with Kevin, but I also want to highlight the importance of using the cloud. Like even financially speaking, using the cloud is much better than having your own hardware and your own handling your own team, because you would have to hire more IT professionals. Like using the cloud, financially speaking, would also benefit a lot in the enterprise.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay, Gihan.
Sure. Hey guys, Gehan Dabre, a quick question on how you collaborated as a team, given the current constraints and everything you probably have going on. How did you function? What tools did you use? How did you ensure everybody is kind of doing their bit?
Jacob, do you want to take that question?
Sure. I mean, yeah, with the current constraints, with all of us being in different areas,
Yeah.
it's not the easiest. There are different time zones and locations, but Zoom was definitely very helpful. Hopped on a lot of calls, email chains, Google Slides, Google Docs.
And
Just kind of keeping track of everybody, making sure that everyone put in their fair share.
Sorry. Just to continue, it was really funny because like we were all on different schedules, like things were coming up, like doctor appointments, like all the time. So we were just like at one point, I remember with Kevin, we were just like, we would just like retire of the competition. Like when it seems like it has been so much trouble. So at the end, we were just insisting so much that, we already started. We need to finish it. Like we got this, and yeah. We did it. We hopped on a bunch of Zoom calls. Like at the end, we did one of the presentations, and the file corrupted, so we all had to film by our own, and then edit. Kevin was able to edit the video, so yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, and I actually during the competition, I probably just heard this guy. I had a newborn as well, so it was tough. It was tough to manage and everything. So. But I think we all eventually at the end of the day, right? We all kind of record our individual components, blend them together, because the first file that we did got corrupted, and I had the file. I was so upset, but we made it work. And a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of email chains, Google Drive, Google Docs, all that stuff. Yeah, can't beat it.
Always got to have a backup.
Yeah, I know. Zoom recording. Now I learned about Zoom recording. So.
And congrats on the newborn.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Barry, would you like to ask any questions?
Yeah, congratulations on the newborn as well, and
Thank you.
Great insight into the collaboration. So, could you talk a little bit about the legal side? That there are a lot of interesting issues posed here between the contractual side, the criminal law side, the international nature of a lot of the facets of the incident that happened here.
Sure thing. I'll start off and then I'll pass it off to my team. So when we talk about the legal stuff, data security law in China, Article 27, the responsibility that PopVote had to the people, they're maintaining personal identifiable information, and they were compromised at the end of the day. Well, there was a DDoS attack against them, right? And we need to have some type of idea of what happened to that data. So PopVote had a responsibility to the people in the citizens of Hong Kong. And we'd like to look at that also as an unwritten contractual agreement too, that the citizens of Hong Kong are utilizing this service. And while, yes or no, they accepted a privacy policy and stuff like that, or terms and conditions, they had a responsibility to protect and secure that data. So we want to make reference to that. And also to the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. And time again, we think about organized crime, and we'll think about, we wouldn't think about cybersecurity when we talk about organized crime, but it is 2014, and we're starting to see more and more organizations pop up that are acting in this organized nature that are committing cyber crimes and committing them across in the US, committing these crimes across state lines. And now we're committing these crimes across oceans. So these are, two very important things that we wanted to reference. I will pass it off to anybody else here want to take on any legal recommendations?
Yeah, we also talked a little bit about Article 27, which basically talked about how individuals cannot engage in illegal intrusion of the networks of other parties. So we wanted to bring that up on the legal side. And we also talked a little bit about data security law. So this basically gave different US law enforcement agencies the authority to get data from anywhere, regardless of where that data is stored. So these were two legal things that we also talked about.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Great insights.
And thank you all so much for your time. Like, we really appreciate it.
All right, excellent. So on this high note, let's wrap it up. Team Cymple beats security. Excellent performance today. Thank you very much for participating in this competition. I hope if you can, you will participate again next year. Tell your friends about this competition. Again, thank you for your time, and I will email you regarding the next steps. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.